Gather round the campfire, friends. I have some chilling tales to share with you tonight. You see, for every infamous murderer whose name has been seared into history, there exists a sordid underbelly of copycats. The Tylenol killer copycats. Let's begin with a terrifying incident that shook the nation to its core back in 1982. The unthinkable happened. Someone had laced extra-strength Tylenol capsules with cyanide, leading to the agonizing deaths of 7 innocent people in the Chicago area. This heinous act, now infamously known as the Tylenol killer case, forever changed the way we view over-the-counter medications. But the nightmare didn't end there, my friends. Like a twisted shadow, the copycats emerged, seeking to replicate that terror. In 1986, a woman in New York City died agonizing minutes after taking 2 Tylenol capsules laced with that same deadly cyanide. That same year, the killer's poison spread to Excedrin too. 2 poor souls in Washington state perished after ingesting cyanide-tainted capsules of the pain relief aid. However, in this second Excedrin case, the culprit was finally unmasked. The killer was none other than Stella Nickel, the own wife of one of the victims. Can you believe that? Driven by greed and a twisted hunger for her husband's life insurance payout, this black widow sought to profit from her loved one's death. Her sentence? A staggering 80 years rotting behind bars. Natural-born killers copycats. Let's move on to a different kind of horror, one that first unfolded on the silver screen before bleeding into real life. Who among us hasn't been captivated by the gritty realism of boundary-pushing films like Natural-Born Killers? But for a few mentally disturbed individuals, this ultra-violent movie became more than entertainment. It became a depraved blueprint for real-life murder and mayhem. Enter Benjamin Doris and Sarah Edmondson, a teenage couple who, after repeatedly binging on Natural-Born Killers, in an LSD-fueled haze, decided to make the film's rampage their reality. In a frenzied burst of psychopathic imitation, their crime spree took them on a cross-state journey of violence from Oklahoma to Mississippi. When the rampage concluded, one innocent bystander lay dead, and another permanently paralyzed by their senseless savagery. Zodiac copycat Eddie Seda. The true terror lies not only in the action of these unhinged individuals. No, perhaps even more bone-chilling is the way they sought to emulate and recreate infamous killers from decades past, like twisted, misguided fanboys trying to walk in the bloody footsteps of legends like the Zodiac Killer. Let me remind you of Eddie Seda, the New York City copycat who took his obsession with the Zodiac murders to a whole new level of depravity. For 3 long, terrifying years in the early 90s, Seda stalked and butchered his victims based on their astrological signs. The sadistic slayings accompanied by creepy codes and cryptic notes meant to mock the police. A real-life remixed reboot of the unsolved Zodiac Killer case. Scream copycat killer Thierry Jaredin. The lure of the silver screen sirens can have a powerful, unfortunate effect on fragile psyches. We saw it with Natural-Born Killers, and again with the case of Thierry Jaredin, a disturbed Belgian man who became dangerously obsessed with the horror franchise Scream. Enraged into a delusional fury after the 15-year-old object of his obsession rejected his creepy advances, Jaredin decided to act out the films to an unspeakable degree. Donning the trademark ghostly mask, he grabbed 2 large kitchen knives and butchered the teenager with 36 stab wounds, making sure to precisely recreate a signature injury from the movie. Afterwards, in a final act of horrifying depravity, he casually confessed his slaughter to his own father and a co-worker. Jack the Ripper copycat Derek Brown. Like the Zodiac, another legendary murderer who birthed a modern copycat was Jack the Ripper. You know the story. In 1888, the unidentified Ripper carried out a sadistic string of violent mutilation murders against women in the slums of London, the awful crimes achieving international notoriety. Over a century later, the Ripper legend drew another sick admirer in Derek Brown, a depraved 47-year-old father of 7, Cruising those same East London streets where the Ripper's reign of terror took place, Brown carefully selected two victims, a street vendor and a sex worker. While the bodies were never recovered, the copious blood evidence told a grisly story of dismemberment, desecration of his victims' corpses, and a chilling attempt to mimic the Ripper's MO. The Matrix copycats. But not all unhinged individuals were taken with the monstrous legacies of history's worst killers. No, some clearly disturbed minds instead choose to take their inspiration from total fiction and fantasy, even culty sci-fi classics like The Matrix. Take the case of Vadim Maiseges in 2002. After brutally murdering his landlord in California, this young man astonishingly claimed that he had somehow awoken to the harsh truth that our world is indeed the titular Matrix, and his landlord was an enemy program that needed terminating. His paranoid defense showcased a complete break from reality fueled by the film's potent philosophical musings. Tragically, the body count linked to Matrix delusions didn't end there. In early 2003, a 19-year-old Virginia man named Joshua Cook fatally shot his parents, later ranting to authorities that his family had been engaged in a conspiracy and they were no longer human, playing right into the core premise of machines enslaving mankind. The film's dystopian framework had literally poisoned his mind. Then, just a few months later, an Ohio woman named Tonda Lynn Ansley also cited The Matrix after shooting her landlord to death. In her deranged version of reality, she too had awoken from the simulation and decided to strike back against the evil landlord brainwashing her. Clearly warped inspiration drawn from Neo's rebellion against the machines. Dexter copycat, Mark Andrew Twitchell. Let's talk about the Canadian filmmaker Mark Andrew Twitchell, who managed to recreate the grisly crimes from the Showtime series Dexter in the real world. You know the show's premise. Dexter Morgan is a police forensic analyst by day, but by night he's a serial killer methodically hunting down other murderers who have escaped justice. Well, in 2008, Twitchell seemed to take this pop premise as an instruction manual. First, he filmed his own sinister short film depicting his twisted version's opening kill. Then, this budding psychopath lured his actual victim, an unsuspecting man, to a garage using a fake online dating persona. There, Twitchell mercilessly murdered and disposed of the man, with clear intent to hunt more prey in the near future. Thanks to smart detective work, his prolific serial killer ambitions were halted, but the sheer audacity of his first slaying still shakes investigators to their core. Taxi driver copycat John Hinckley. Finally, we have to discuss one of the most momentous, history-altering cases of life imitating art gone awry. I'm referring to that fateful night of March 30th, 1981, when a disturbed man named John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan outside of a Washington, D.C. hotel, all because of his deranged obsession with the 1976 film Taxi Driver. In that Scorsese classic, Robert De Niro plays a disturbed loner who ultimately tries to assassinate a presidential candidate to impress a woman he's infatuated with. Well, taking those warped cues as a personal playbook, Hinckley opened fire on President Reagan because he himself had become obsessed with the actress Jodie Foster after repeated viewings. His callous, senseless attack gravely wounded Reagan, paralyzed a press secretary, and marked both a grim milestone in presidential assassination attempts and a harsh wake-up call to the potential real-world effects of provocative cinema. The incident was so unnerving that it directly led to vastly upgraded presidential security protocols, including restricting public access to the commander-in-chief's movements.